All right, this is Jeff Cook, this is Reading Room. We're on Chapter 4 of Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. Hey, if you want to get involved with discussing this book, we'd love to have you. Go to aroundthecircle.org, sign up for a membership. We send out invitations for Zoom links. You can join us on Tuesday nights, 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern. We talk shop through all of these emotions and through this book. Not only this book, we'll just continue to do other books that have great Enneagram content or are Enneagram adjacent. And again, we'd just love to have you. This, as opposed to last week, which was some heavy emotions, we're pivoting. We're pivoting a little bit towards the positive. Chapter 4 is entitled Places We Go When It's Beyond Us. Again, we're going somewhere. I like her language of going elsewhere. But the emotions are awe, wonder, confusion, curiosity, interest, and surprise. To set this up, and this is something I would love to talk about on Tuesday, these feel like experiences, feelings associated with the mind, with our mind center, with our head center, and what is coming out of those. So there's going to be some future orientedness, there's going to be some deduction, there's going to be how do we process the world going on. Lots of fun stuff to talk about in this chapter, although this chapter was much shorter than some of the other chapters that we have covered. So she starts off with awe and wonder. Here's a quote. Even seeing things we may fail to notice on a regular basis, like starry sky or a butterfly in the garden, can stop us in our tracks on occasion. Both awe-inspiring events and the experiences that leave us filled with wonder often make us feel small compared to our expansive universe. Love this idea. One of the things that we truly miss out on at times in our culture, especially if we live in cities, is that cities, by their nature, have a lot of lights, and light causes pollution. We don't really realize that most of the time, but light pollution is a real thing. Light, the amount of light that a city generates restricts us from seeing beyond our atmosphere, and we can't see the stars in our galaxy. We can't see the other galaxies. But if you get out into the mountains, into the desert, away from population centers, it's incredible how much you can see. And at least for me, I do live in a small town, but it's still the case. I can't see a ton. But when I go home to Carbondale, which is a very, very small town in Colorado, my dad lived out in the middle of nowhere, and just the eruption of colors and lights from our galaxy, from the other galaxies that you can see. I relate to this. It fills you with something. It fills you with it's awe, wonder. There is something going on inside of us in those situations. And it's not just in the big stuff. I think she's right in saying this. It's not just in the big stuff. It's also in the small stuff. Real famous atheist. So I did philosophy of religion. That was my field of study. There's a real famous atheist who became a theist based on looking at his child's ear. There was something about looking at his child's ear that filled him with this sense of awe and wonder. There was no argument at hand for his conversion. It was simply the experience. It was like a mystical experience of experiencing his child's ear. And it filled him with this sense of something more. And he had his own kind of intellectual conversion from that. Real interesting to me. I think there's something about our connection with and participation in the natural world. When we really get into the natural world, that we engage something that is true about us, our heart, what it means to be a human soul. It's one of the things that we truly lack because of how digital our world becomes, because of how, again, artificial our world becomes often. Artificial heating and light, artificial, air conditioning, and obviously our artificial experience of other people through digital media, both in terms of video or even texting. You kind of lose some of the personal that often takes place. We lose something about our humanity in the artificial, and she is connecting awe and wonder to the natural, to the natural experience. I think that's right, and something worth like positioning ourselves for. That's worthwhile. She then quotes two Germans. She writes, "Wonder inspires the wishes to understand. Awe inspires the wish to let shine, to acknowledge and to unite. When feeling awe, we tend to simply stand back and observe, to provide a stage for the phenomenon to shine." I like this image that, like, the thing that you are captured by, it's not enough to simply look at it. It's like you want to unite in some ways. I think that's very healthy. It feels like it's almost a sexual experience at one level. I want to bond with the beauty in front of me. But we know what this is like, where it's not a sexual experience. It's something else. It's like I want to dive into the lake. I want to climb the mountain. I want to somehow amalgamate with the thing in front of me. I really connect with that and think that this is correct. It's both. I want to observe what's going on there, but I also want to somehow participate in the thing that's beautiful. And oftentimes, at least for me, I say this is kind of what I'm made for, or this is where I experience joy. I don't think she brought up joy here, but awe and wonder, I consistently associate with that idea of joy. And where awe and wonder end up kind of having a future reference as I'm talking about it, and rightly so. I think it's more of a mental, and the mind is about the future. For me, joy is more of a past-oriented experience, dripping with nostalgia and melancholy and the glories of the past. And so, man, that's probably worth talking about there for a minute. Quote 3 for me is on page 59. Awe and wonder are essential to the human experience. Wonder fuels our passion for exploration and learning, for curiosity and adventure. You'll notice all of the head type kind of postures there, or pushing into that center. Researchers have found that awe leads people to cooperate, share resources, and sacrifice for others, and cause them to fully appreciate the value of others and see themselves more accurately, evoking humility. Some researchers even believe that awe-inducing events may be one of the fastest and most powerful methods of personal change and growth. Love this. Love this. There is something about, so I know like in recovery movements, often they want to get you out of the city. They want to get you into somewhere where you're kind of secluded a little bit, but also like making a fire, hiking a trail, doing things with your hands that are reconnecting you with the earth. The image here of like, what is it that produces that awe, that wonder? That's at least what I hear. It's like get you into the natural world, and when that happens, it's probably part of our physiology and nervous system. It leads people to cooperate, share, sacrifice. There's something humanizing at these levels. Find that really valuable. It's also the case like awe and wonder seem to be the opposite at some levels of meaninglessness. And so like when struggling with purpose, when struggling with like, what am I doing with my life? Like sometimes there's just no answer to that. But sometimes like the best solution would be something of this nature, is like, I need to get my body to experience things that are just beautiful, that awaken something in me that you may not be able to actually put your thumb on, but it's there. And just, that's at least what hits me on these quotes. Next emotion is confusion. The concept of optimal confusion is key to understanding why confusion is good for us and why it's categorized as an epistemic emotion. Epistemic is about knowledge, head center. It's an epistemic emotion, an emotion critical to knowledge acquisition and learning. It turns out that confusion, like many uncomfortable things in life, is vital for learning. According to research, confusion has the potential to motivate, lead to deep learning, and trigger problem solving. A study led by Sidney DeMello found that when we're trying to work through our confusion, we need to stop and think, engage in careful deliberation, develop a solution, and revise how we approach the next problem. Productive thinking going on there, and high value of something that may feel uncomfortable. I don't necessarily feel comfortable when I'm confused. Love the spin here, that this is an invitation to some of your best elements, and again, what I see there is that as a one, she may be very aware that critical thinking, engaging in careful deliberation, stopping and thinking, those aren't natural for her, given that she's thinking repressed. And now one Susan sixes will need to stop and do intentional reasoning and thinking in order to get their heads around things. And confusion might be very valuable in making that happen. Love that as an image. Quote 5 for me. The same way you feel a muscle burn when it's being strengthened, the brain needs to feel some discomfort when it's learning. Your mind might hurt for a while, but that's a good thing. Comfortable learning environments rarely lead to deep learning. This is a truth about human beings that's hard. She'll talk about how there's balance that needs to take place. Like sometimes you can have too much difficulty in your thinking. That's not a good thing. That's true of, I like the image of weights and muscles burning here. For those of us who have really tried to get into our bodies, to strengthen our bodies, we know that it's not, there's a sweet spot. You can go too little, you can go too much. You want to hit that sweet spot where you are stimulating the muscle, stimulating your heart, stimulating your lungs, getting yourself into that spot where they're really working for a bit, and then you have to do recovery. But there is some discomfort there. Embracing the discomfort, really important. In weight training, like one of the big ideas is failure. You want to push your muscle to places at times, not all the time, but at times you want to take your muscles to failure. That is, you want to lift a weight over and over and over again until your arm or your leg or your stomach or your back, they can't lift it another time. When you do that, it optimizes the growth of the muscle, and it's something you can visually see. We can see how muscles grow. It's called hypertrophy. You can see how muscles grow when you condition them in a way where you move them to those places of nearing failure or at failure, and then pair that with, like proteins and stuff that will build the muscle. Love this in terms of the head. Works the same principle at work. Confusion is a great good. It invites you to move your mind into spaces where hopefully you'll hit up against something where you fail. I have a real hard time with this. I want to be smart. I want to have the answers. I don't want to necessarily come all the time with questions. Questions make me feel inadequate at times. Here she's elevating. No, actually, confusion's a great good for you. You should ask more questions. We're going to push into curiosity in a minute. Curiosity is actually a virtue for many of us. Like, we want not only our friends to be curious, our lovers to be curious, we want our president to be curious. We want, the people who are endeavoring in the medical field to be curious. We want philosophers to be curious. We want everybody to be curious who's doing big work or who we're in relationship with. But notice, like, if you're not confused about anything, it may be the case that curiosity just doesn't appear. Anyway, this was really helpful for me because I need to land myself in places where I'm very comfortable saying I don't know the answer. Just watched Oppenheimer again, and there's some places up front where he and other researchers are trying to figure out a mathematical theorem that would point to black holes. The nature of black holes is you can't see them, light disappears or gets sucked in, or I'm not sure how that works. I'm not a physicist, but they know that black holes exist, not because they see them, but because of the math. And the mathematical paradoxes that Oppenheimer hits early in his career end up pointing in those directions. And he just takes a posture of, I don't know what this means. What does this mean? And he hands it to people to be curious about, and they end up going on to research, and it's fantastic. You develop insights into the universe itself based on that. Anyway, I was heartened by that. Next section is on curiosity and interest. Interest is a cognitive openness to engaging with a topic. Curiosity is recognizing a gap in our knowledge about something that interests us and becoming emotionally and cognitively invested in closing that gap through exploration and learning. Curiosity often starts with interest and can range from mild curiosity to passionate investigation. I love the overlap of the heart and mind here. It seems to me, and maybe this is intuitive at some levels, but becoming emotionally invested in something that you are learning matters. There is something about like passion, will, paired with the mind, real valuable here and worth naming. That like as one of my I was talking to some friends yesterday, and they have parents who exclusively watch one TV station and aren't interesting to be around. And like, you would go to them, what are you reading? Tell me about, things that what movies have you watched? What songs have you listened to? What are you interested in? And all they can talk about is their dogs. And so they have a ton of dogs. And so it just becomes, we're watching the dogs and analyzing their behavior as they're sitting with us. And they're not interesting. They're not interesting because they have little passion for anything beyond what is communicated on this specific TV station. And they've just become boring people because of it. There's something about being a fully alive, awake, holistic human being, it seems to me, that requires some passion about learning the next thing, becoming curious. Like, this is a mind fully awake. Or is your mind alive in seeking? A huge part of this study for me is I realized like last year that I just haven't been learning what I need to learn about Enneagram. And actually I think most Enneagram teachers don't spend time reading what's coming out in the Enneagram. They may be real familiar with some of the stuff that they came into contact with when they were first learning. And so they keep, quoting the hits from before. But there's lots of great work coming out recently. And who's actually doing business with this? I felt a real hole in my knowledge here. And I want to be curious. Like, that's more it. It's like, I think curiosity is, it may be a passion, a feeling, but it's also a virtue. And virtues are human excellences. And that's what I read in some of her writing here. Well worth talking about. Like, what are the virtues of the human mind when the mind is fully awake? What is it at its best? It's the excellent mind. It's wise. It's insightful. It's able to deduce and see clearly. But there's also this element, the curiosity, that is worth naming. Anyway, next quote. What's important about this perspective is that it means we have to have some level of knowledge or awareness before we can become curious. We aren't curious about something we are unaware of or know nothing about. This has huge implications for education. One of the people that she's quoting explains that simply encouraging people to ask questions doesn't go very far towards stimulating curiosity. He writes, to induce curiosity about a particular topic, it may be necessary to prime the pump, to use intriguing information to get folks interested so they become more curious, and to create opportunities for exposure to new ideas and experiences. This is what liberal arts education is. You get, let me dive in. Let's dive into the classics for a minute. So we're going to read Plato, Aristotle, Aquinas, the New Testament. We're going to read some of the great works of historic literature, Shakespeare, Wittgenstein, Dostoevsky. We're pushing into those spaces, priming the pump so that you can have the real conversation. The real conversation isn't, hey, what do you think about, the Plato's Apology? The real question is, now that you kind of have a base for understanding the foundational works of the Western tradition, now let's talk about big things. I think that's correct. You can't get to higher level, like the highest levels of being a human being. It seems to me at some level, like you have to study some of the stuff that's come before you. You have to really engage it so that you can then elevate And that's what education is. So presently, I've wanted to come to this quote this whole time. I've like hit this spot with Enneagram where I feel like I am tired of being the answer man, even though obviously look at what I'm doing right now. I'm just giving my reflections on this book. But like my entire educational career has been kind of formatted around presenting papers that have the answer, presenting lectures that have the answer, writing books that have the answer, composing podcasts or videos that have the answer. That's like what I do is provide answers. Really got challenged here in the last 4 or 5 months that it's time for me to stop trying to give answers and to pivot hard into asking better questions. That's actually what I saw here. It's like that's what curiosity at its best looks like. I'm informed about the Enneagram. I'm as informed as anybody on the planet about the Enneagram. But I don't know as much about the Enneagram as I often want to. I especially don't have the vocabulary of the inner life of other types. Oftentimes, I don't have the vocabulary for the inner life of ones. I have a vocabulary for my own experience. So this next season, especially as we get into panels, my hope is to really elevate others to speak and just to ask informed questions to them to elicit the kind of information data responses that lead to real insights about Enneagram. And so anyway, as I was reading this, I was kind of heartened in terms of that decision. I'm kind of pulling away from some stuff in order to say, what are the questions that need to be asked during this season? So next quote, 65. Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. She likes vulnerability. We have to ask questions, admit to not knowing, risk being told that we shouldn't be asking, and sometimes make discoveries that lead to discomfort. I think this is spot on, by the way. And especially if the higher you get, especially in higher ed and such, it's hard to be curious at levels where you are asking more fundamental questions and saying, I don't know, and allowing uncertainty to be there. So some of you will know that like I worked in church world for a while. Uncertainty is baggage for people in church world, especially like if you have to get up with a mic, 300 people showed up to your building, you need to tell them about God and what God's plan is for their life. And if you come with uncertainty, well, that's a lack, Can't be up there with a mic asking questions. You certainly can't be like in back rooms talking about, I don't know what we should do, or I'm having questions about God and some of the traditional moral teachings, or even the 20th century American moral traditions, especially in the last half of the century, that may need to get rethought. You can't do that. She's exactly right that this leads to vulnerability. It's risky. It's risky for some of us to push into questions and say that there aren't good answers right now in this sphere. But good questions are how the world changes. Some of you will know this. Physicists in the early 20th century knew that light was not bending in the way that Newtonian mechanics said it should, but they didn't know why. It's hard to ask the question, like, why is it the case that the light isn't behaving according to Newton's theories? Newton's theories are essential to the scientific revolution, to the developments of modern medicine, to flight, to, to just understanding the world and the spinning of our planet around the sun, etc. You can't question Newton. You lose tenure. I suppose tenure is meant to be so you keep your job. You lose your colleagues won't like you if you start questioning Newton. Einstein's theory of general relativity comes in here. He is able to explain the bending of light, and it's a revolution. It's a huge revolution in the sciences because he rejects Newtonian mechanics when it comes to the behavior of light and its curiosity. It leads to an explosion, dare we say, in 20th century scientific thought. That's a place of vulnerability risk. There's an emotional component here. Will my colleagues let me get away with this? Will they care about me and let me keep my job if I go down these roads? For some of you, you haven't experienced that. Like, I experience that all the time in church world, people talking in that way. Our church wasn't like that, but we didn't have any money. So we made our decision and opted for poverty, which, by the way, is the way of Jesus. Quote 9 for me, page 66. Our childlike curiosity is often tested as we grow up, and we sometimes learn that too much curiosity, like too much vulnerability, can lead to hurt. As a result, we turn to self-protection, choosing certainty over curiosity, armor over vulnerability, knowing over learning. But shutting down comes with a price we rarely consider when we're focused on finding our own way out of pain. I think this is worth talking about. Is there a limit? Should we be moderate with our curiosity, moderate with our vulnerability, or is it the case that vulnerability is always a great good? Is curiosity always a great good? That's something worth naming. Aristotle has categories on this front, that there are what he calls unlimited goods. Knowledge is good in the maximum amount. You can't have enough knowledge. You can't have enough courage. You can't have enough wisdom. You can't have enough of the virtues. There are some things that are only good in limited amounts. Food is good up to a point. You don't want to eat too much, but you don't want to eat too little. You want to have that moderate amount. I'd be curious about vulnerability and curiosity here. Is it the case that they need to be moderated? Ooh, she quotes Einstein. Just because I referenced Einstein, I'm going to say this, just it wasn't in my quotes. Einstein said the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. That's a good place to land. It's a, what do you call that? It's anthropomorphizing curiosity. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. As though curiosity is saying, look, I exist and I got my own reason for existing. I might not tell you that, but it makes me laugh. Our next quote is on surprise. We've talked about surprise, I think, before, or excitement. Felt similar to me. Our next section is on surprise. She writes, similar to findings by these other two researchers, my team and I define surprise as an interruption caused by information that doesn't fit with our current understanding or expectations. It causes us to reevaluate. To reevaluate. This is a big concept for me. This is like central to my favorite thinker of the 20th century, who is Thomas Kuhn. Thomas Kuhn has a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, in which he pitched paradigms. Paradigms are frameworks from which we understand the world. And the only way those big pictures are challenged is what he calls anomalies. They're the things that we don't expect. So an example of this would be like, you may believe in God. God's existence is clear, makes sense of the world, but then something really tragic happens and you experience pain. And a primary question is, why would God allow such pain? That's an anomaly. It's creating a question for the big picture. That's me as a philosopher coming to this. Surprise feels like that to me. It's like in big ways, small ways. Like, you expect things to go a certain way, and then something happens. It doesn't fit with that framework. You have to reevaluate. That's what I heard there. And I thought that was fun. But surprise is a cognitive state. She closes this section. There's a strong relationship between surprise and unexpectedness. In fact, several of the definitions of surprise, we use the word unexpected. However, in our lived experiences, we don't use the word synonymously. We normally use surprise for experiences that link quickly to emotion. When we use the term unexpected, the experience starts with thinking just like surprise, but it often stays cognitive rather than bridging to emotion. as you can see, unexpected doesn't convey emotion the way surprise does. I like this again. There's kind of an overlap between the head center and heart center. That's, I suppose, what I'm seeing there. Or it may be the case that the head center just has its own set of emotions, and that's valuable. And we should just name that the cognitive center has emotions. We've been talking about this, and maybe just what's going on in a human person when they're experiencing emotions. You have the centers. You have the head, heart, and gut, right? They're sending you information. You're experiencing, I forgot how we talked about this, but it was like you were experiencing emotions in your body primarily, but there's like the feelings associated with the head, or the feelings of the heart, the feelings of the body. Those are occurring in those centers, but they're experienced as emotions. I want to say that's what we said. Anyway, I would love to bring that back up as well. This was, again, very short chapter, but lots of stuff to say. So do take a look. And if you haven't signed up for a membership, I would love to have you. We are meeting again Tuesday nights. Go to aroundthecircle.org. Just go to announcements. There's a link for announcements, and you'll see all the things that we're doing here for the reading room. Or you can click on the link that says reading room, and it will take you where you need to go. So much love to you. I hope you enjoy your week.